You can't bucket your ICP into one segment. You have to have sub-buckets. These are people who are thought leaders and in our ICP segment. These are people that, we can sell to immediately. The debate should be, are these more thought leaders? Are these people that can impact our business on the long term? Or are they people I can sell to now? So if we look at the sales process, you sell to 100 people, 1 to 3% are in buyer-ready mode. So what happens to the 97%? You want to put them into a different bucket. You want to build relationships with them. You don't want to sell to all of them constantly. It's not about 100 touch points versus 1,000 touch points, like initially at least. But in the long term, yes, those meaningful touch points, not just number of emails, I sent 1,000 emails. No, right. That's not really building a relation per se. It depends. So I think what sales leaders should do is they need to look at their metrics, look down that, okay, our team are calling, they're constantly getting leads as well, they're getting opportunities, great, but what is happening to those that they're not converting? So that needs to go into a separate bucket of relationship generation activities that marketing, revenue leaders, field marketeers can focus on.
You're listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience, a podcast dedicated to helping executives train their sales and marketing teams to optimize growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. Let's accelerate your growth in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. I'm your host, Cory. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Moaaz Nagori. He is the head of marketing at ConvergeX Connections, a company focused on corporate event success. As the head of marketing, he plays a crucial role in promoting ConvergeX Connections services, which include connecting executives with clients and ensuring successful corporate events. He's also well known in all things lead generation, email marketing, business consulting, and I'm so excited to have the opportunity to chat with you. Welcome to the show.
Likewise, the pleasure is mine. Very excited to be here, Cory.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of great stuff to get into. I think anyone who's interested in marketing these days is seeing events coming back in a big way and is also seeing the impact of networking and maybe some more non-traditional approaches or some approaches that we haven't really kicked over in the last few years coming back strong. So I'm excited. Moaaz, so what inspired your journey into marketing and lead gen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And actually back in 2017, when we were just early in with Cloudlead, in 1 year in, we decided to actually have, go to a conference in London called the Sales Innovation Expo. And of course, you stand from afar reaching out to prospects. You might call them, you might email them. But when you actually get the chance to on the ground, meet people in your ICP or just network in general with people in your, zone, in the place of intent for you and relevance. More importantly, you see some magic happen, man. With events and meeting people. So I think that was my real turning point and inspiration for, understanding the real meaning behind lead generation. I think it's a relationship generation rather than just lead generation. It's not just about, I thought of it less as, reaching out for just getting a reply or that demo, but rather reaching out to build a relation, to connect with that person. And hopefully something bigger and better comes beyond that. And that can take patience, but that's what you learn from it. It takes time. You don't learn that initially.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I mean, even from the perspective of, I'm going to say this and I'm putting on my CRO hat at the same time, I'm going to say that even from the perspective of a learning journey, right, for marketing and business development professionals, going to events and having the opportunity to speak with not only 1 or 2 customers, right, but maybe 40, 50, 100 potential customers that have real problems and are there to discuss them, it's really invaluable.
Completely agree, man. It's like a ton of market research, a ton of positive critical feedback, a lot of things you can even learn from your customers regarding what your processes, where your processes need fixing, or you can even see other stakeholders. That's actually really interesting too. It doesn't have to be all about customers. It could even be about people that are indirectly related to your business. So you get to see a vast amount of people that you might not originally just see when you're just too lead gen focused.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think that you and I seem pretty aligned on this and in agreement about the impact that live events can have, and more so about the idea of switching it. And I think I'm going to get this right, but I was really struck by what you said from it's not just lead generation, it's a relationship generation in a way. I'm curious, was there one moment, if you had to pinpoint just one, that really kind of flipped the switch for you between that lead generation mindset and that relationship generating mindset?
Yeah, I love the question, man. Actually, see, the way I'll put it is that, let's just say I shook someone's hand during an event one day and I thought little of it. So I enjoyed the event, of course, don't get me wrong, but how silly of me was to not consider that back then, that these relationships could be massive contracts for me down the line. And that's exactly what happened, but not 3 months. Not 2 months, it took 2 years of us just saying hi, hello, meeting here and there, and staying in touch, helping each other out sometimes. And suddenly, when that need arose, or when you're the person top of money, well, you can bet they're going to either introduce you, or when they are in that position to empower you as, to onboard you as a vendor, they're already an evangelist, because of the relation. It's not always about, of course, product, service delivery. It's great, but it's driven by relationship building as well. We can't make no mistake on that. And I think that's a unique selling proposition for a company too, how well they build relations with their personas, with people in their ICP. So, at that point when, of course, revenue it kind of really gives you that final reward as well. It is, but it doesn't have to be the immediate kick that you want to feel. That's the thing with relationships. You kind of detach from the outcome, and you'd want to just help out and know that, yeah, we have our interests. I can help you. You could help me. But where will it lead us? Well, time will tell, though. It will tell. So that's the beauty of relationship building.
Yeah, I agree. You don't have to convince me. I'm already sold. I'm a marketer like you, right? So every closed one deal, I'm in the system of record looking at, 34 marketing touches there might have helped, too as well, right? Yeah. Build that relationship long term. But if I go to I put on my salesperson hat, or even particularly my sales leader hat, I'm thinking, well, that's all great. And we're all inspired by those stories. And yes, when it works out, it can be, just a huge windfall that culminates, that 2 years of relationship building. But a lot of sales leaders, it feels like they're focused on the short-term wins because they have to be right now. They're thinking, well, where am I at, at the end of the quarter? Or do we have enough pipeline to make sure that I'm going to close out this quarter strong enough? And, they're telling, their AEs to focus on that short-term winnable business. So how can leaders kind of balance those two, what would seem as competing strategies?
Very, very thought-provoking question. Though this is the way I see it. First and foremost, you can't bucket your ICP into one segment. You have to, have sub-buckets. These are people who are thought leaders and in our ICP segment. These are people that, we can sell to immediately. The debate should be, are these more thought leaders? Are these people that can impact our business on the long term? Or are they people I can sell to now? So if we look at the sales process, you sell to 100 people, 1 to 3% are in buyer-ready mode. So what happens to the 97%? You want to put them into a different bucket. You want to build relationships with them. You don't want to sell to all of them constantly. It's not about 100 touch points versus 1,000 touch points, right? Yeah, initially at least. But in the long term, yes, those meaningful touch points, not just number of emails, I sent 1,000 emails. No, right? That's not really building a relation per se. It depends. So I think what sales leaders should do is they need to look at their metrics. Look down that, okay, Our team are calling, they're constantly, like getting leads as well. They're getting opportunities, great. But what is happening to those that they're not converting? So that needs to go into a separate bucket of relationship generation activities that marketing, revenue leaders, field marketeers can focus on. Yeah. So for example, they could want to coordinate cross-functionally, coordinate with their marketing team that, hey, let's invite 20 C-levels to a dinner and discuss this topic. We don't have to sell to them. Let's not sell to them, but let's talk about an idea. It could be anything. Could be generative AI, it could be revenue attribution, could be anything that matters to them. And that's it. You'll see the relationship build when you share that meaningful connection and good content with them. So that's my take. Bucket them separately.
Yeah, I love that advice, because you've got, like you said, 1 to 3, you're targeting 100 people, maybe 1 to 3 are in a buying window.
Maybe that too, maybe hit the nail. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so when you think about okay, so we've got these others, we've got these 97, 98, 99 others, right? Then multiply that times 10 for any given month. But so what do we do with those people? We have the thought leader bucket, we have this big nurture bucket, but what are some of the concrete strategies you've seen to be most impactful over the years?
Yeah. The way I see it, I think buyers, because they're also changing the way they buy as well. I would say in this sense, B2C has been ahead of us in this sense. And I'll tell you why. I heard some influencer post about, I don't know, some tech or any product that I should be using. It'll be a game changer for me. That kind of behavior, you don't see it much in B2B, but now we see that happen a lot more. Unofficially, in dark behind the scenes, we see people take referrals. I'm not talking about that entirely. I'm talking about B2B influencer marketing, for example, taking an uprising in today's day and age. We have not seen as many B2B influencers as we used to. And that trend is kind of almost mimicking a B2C type nurture you would see, in the buying process. So it's not that simple awareness, interest, decision, act. That old model is not really, it's kind of by definition there, but its meaning has changed. So yeah, I think marketeers need to seriously evolve, think about different strategies beyond the traditional cold email, for example, or marketing only newsletter, or they need to be more thought-provoking. They need to be, go indirect even, actually. Indirect being for example, influencer. An example, hiring someone to talk about your product, or even this podcast is an excellent example. This is a great place where you can just have a conversation, talk about something of intent to your audience and go ahead with that, lead with that.
Yeah, you're definitely right. We've always kind of been a laggard to B2C stuff. Yeah. And in some ways it's good, right? We have the benefit of the wait and see, okay, this is the trend. Let's give it 3 months. Let's see if we can adapt it. Let's see what will happen with it. But I really want to talk more about the influencer marketing, because that's something that I worked in, and I'm going to date myself. It would have been about, I want to say 2016 was around the time when it felt like B2B influencing, at least in tech, right, was kind of kicking off, and that was more of a B2C play, and we saw some success. But that seemed to really kind of fall off a cliff. And now there's maybe a resurgence, but how do you see that going? What's the future of B2B influencer marketing look like?
Very true. Yeah, look, I agree, by the way, by that trend you kind of shared. I see very similarities to it. But if we look a little closer, because I've noticed that it's about influence. In B2B, the difference is you have to really dig down on influencer quality. B2C is more about mass, right? You can go mass with certain products. It's easier in that way. But in B2B, because our ICPs are so laser focused, you need to have influencer and topic fit with your marketing objectives. And if that alignment does not exist, For example, we have an influencer who is the CMO of a company and posts a lot, but doesn't post, he posts 10% only about topics you're interested in. So you could assume 90% of the audience is not driven by those topics, right? It all digs down to the strategy, like picking and doing the due diligence. I don't know if you've ever heard of actually even Influencer, for example. It's a company, up-and-comer company in the influencer marketing, B2B influencer marketing space. Really, like good friends with the founder, CEO as well there. And he taught me a lot about influencer marketing too. That's how I know a thing or two, but that's where we see the biggest flaw in influencer marketing. There's that alignment issue. It's not that it's not relevant. And how deep are the followers? Like, how intent are the followers? Are they just posting fluff and they enjoy that fluff? Or are they posting something actionable and they really learned something from it? So all these questions come down to how influencer marketing really benefits. It doesn't work that way. Oh, I endorse this tech, buy this tech. No. And I'll post about it. No. You have to be more descriptive about it and more detailed. There has to be a story.
Yeah, I love that. That's actually really actionable, right? When you think about align to your ICP closely, right? You've got to have the overwhelming majority of the content be what your ICP cares about on a daily, weekly basis. You then take it a step further and say that it's got to be actionable advice. Like you said, I mean, I love a good marketing meme, and yeah, I'll like it, but I'm not really that's not gonna jumpstart a buying journey for me. And then finally, it's got to be something that is got to be at the right time, and it's got to be in front of them in the right way. So yeah, that's a really good 3-step process to help us think through this.
Thank you.
All right, so I want to switch gears a little bit because we've been talking a lot around like relationship building, and that obviously is going to lead us right back around to networking. And definitely in sales, sometimes, on LinkedIn these days, it definitely feels like networking, quote unquote, is very transactional, right? You get the in-mail, you get the connection request, and then an hour later you get the sales pitch, that kind of thing. And you can't blame people for doing that, right? When they've got activity metrics they've got to hit, people looking over their shoulders. But at the same time, I think we all know it's not going to work in the majority of cases for the majority of products or solutions. So what's a better way? What are some specific strategies that businesses can adopt to transform their networking?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'd be biased to, again, move the tangent towards events and how that's really been kicking off, in this year as well. But I have been seeing that a recent shift events as well. The previous model, you could say that where you attend a floor of where there's hundreds of people attending an event, it can get very cluttered, not really focused. So we've seen a shift a bit towards more of these micro or medium-sized, events that are more marketing focused or even sub-function. Like it could be field marketing focused, SEO event. We won't just see marketing event. You won't see, and I think those are going to be what drives the future of event marketing, more specific, laser-focused events. So because marketeers and salespeople are kind of tasked with the same thing, do more, get more with less. If we think about it, they're on the same side, but yeah, different ways of getting the same thing, but we're on the same side. So I think the strategy needs to shift towards a lot of more relevance-driven, that personalization day and age came by where, someone got like funding or they're opening a new office, so let's just comment a bit about that and they'll get impressed. But the over-emailing influx that came in, especially thanks to COVID, COVID kind of like, rocket fueled that process. And I think that's creating a lot of digital fatigue with people. They're getting a bit tired of that same old. So now people are looking for the real impact messages, something that triggers our knowledge, emotions. And that's what I think some of the best salespeople are those that are comedians, for example, or can joke, or it's good to have these strategies in place And I think strategies are going to continually shift towards being less just transactional and more relationship building, like it was in the good old days as well. And and it'll be for good reason. So even for one thing, I recently attended this webinar on how SEO is changing as well. Like how people are not only, it's not just about like publishing content on the publishing creator side. It's also about the consuming side, how people are consuming content. It's completely changed with AI, with ChatGPT searches and AI recommendations. So marketers need to think out of the box. Like, podcasting is an excellent example as well. Events, excellent example. Influencer marketing, excellent example. Like thought leadership discussions. These are the kind of activities where you really, I think, provoke people in your audience to want to understand you more.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. It's provoke it, right? To kind of pique that curiosity, to want to understand what's behind what you're selling like that. Let's get into these sort of, I don't know if the term is micro events or, these smaller events, right? Where you have maybe a dinner for 20 people or you've got sort of a networking opportunity for 50. I've been to a few and they've taken vastly different forms and had vastly different outcomes. So I'd love to learn from an expert, what's the proper way to do it? Like what's the best setup? How do you go through it?
Absolutely. Well, the way we like to think about this is, first you need to understand that what am I going to talk about, right? I mean, that I'd love to have people from these top 100 or 200 account lists, C-levels in our ICP attend this event. You'll make an impact to them. Great. We want you to do that. But what are you going to say? You need to really think about that. And as tempting as it can be to, I got them into a room, let's pitch. Let's go and skip a few stages of the relationship building process and let's just go again. Because I think that's just a bit in our nature to want to just get an outcome really quickly, like you referenced a little bit back in our conversation. We're tempted to do that. But how you really need to do it is really think about your topic and how it will align interest with those people you're inviting. Once you do that, think about all those steps that, those questions that you want all of them to participate in, make it more conversational. You haven't made it salesy? Great. You're talking about the topic of their interest and you've got a conversation going? Great. That's how you do it. And of course, they'll enjoy an amazing dinner at an excellent venue. That's something you should always do. You should think about that because you want to be experiential as well. It's about the experience when you're, of course, investing on them, investing on yourself to build that relation, then you'd want to go a bit all in. Then after that, of course, I think where a lot of companies are not really able to understand, like, how do we, post-event, like retention, that relationship retention, how do we keep that? I think there's a huge drop-off when that happens. It's just like the business card is the last thing they see when they go back home, and what are they going to do? Let's be honest. They're going to probably throw it away or, exactly. They're not going to stick it on their fridge. They're not going to do that. I mean, I don't know. The reason is they're going to remember who they spoke to. They're going to remember that excitement in that conversation. And that's where you continue. So like where I work, for example, with ConvergeX Connections, like what we also have really focused on is post-event one-to-one meetings for our client, for example, just giving that just to set it out. And how that makes a real difference is that we want to make sure that after the event, they had a nice meal, great, but you get a chance to retain that relationship. And that's how I think events would definitely yield that right outcome. And in that post-event meeting, again, reference that meeting you had, talk further about, that topic and how both of our interests could possibly align. And you know what? A lot of the times then that person themselves directs the conversation towards the buying side because they can do 1 + 1. They know that, of course, But you don't want to be cheap about it. You don't want to be cheap about it. If they come, it's like a relationship building exercise, and you don't want to just come off as cheap at the end by just pitching and getting it over with. No. You want to leave an impact, so that's how you would do it.
Yeah, I love summing it up like you just did too. Just don't be cheap about it. Exactly. It's so funny. I mean, in some dinners, I feel like, they're connected to an event, right? And you have the event venue, which is either a hotel or a big conference center in Vegas or something, right? Everyone's already shown up. We all ate the breakfast buffet. We all felt sick an hour later. And yet, at the end of a 10-hour day, you expect to herd 20 people into a room and feed them the same food and have it be a success. So that's why I was so thankful you brought up the experiential marketing side of it. Another thing that seems like started in B2C and is just kind of trickling over, but should be kind of self-apparent. So I guess it's a long-winded way of saying, if I want to set up an event, or I have listeners out there that want to set up an event, how can you really kind of drive home the importance of that experiential side, and what's the ideal setup like?
So this is another thing, thanks to, working where I am. I mean, I noticed that the moderator, if you invest in the right moderator or person who sparks that conversation within that event, that's gold. That makes or breaks it. Because people, as much as they do like talking, they need to be given, you need to pique their curiosity. You need to invite them, make them feel invited. So it's just, I guess, human nature. Maybe some are, more extroverts, or they could want to just take charge of the event, but, and take over almost. But that also is not fun. Only one person talking and there's 10 people. Okay, maybe he's an entertainer, but that's something else. I don't know, whoever. But you want to give everyone a chance to talk, open their minds, and not just talk about that topic either. It should also be informal. We forget that. Mixing the informal with the topic at hand creates more engagement, relaxes the mind. It's a bit more of psychology, one would say, rather than, let's get the event done almost like a classroom session. No, it's not like a class. You're not bringing people back to school here. You want to enjoy, have a bit of a laugh as well, and discuss something meaningful and create connections with people.
I think that's fantastic advice. From the perspective of having a good moderator, having one tremendous question to kick things off, it sounds simple, but it can make or break an event, in my experience. And then also having someone that can balance the conversation, like you were saying, make sure that everyone has an opportunity to contribute, and at the same time, so you're keeping it on track in that way, but by the same token, you're letting it go off track and evolve organically, which feels like it's very hard, right? I feel like I want to hire a diplomat to do this and lead my next event. But who's the best person to lead these events? Is it someone internal? Do you go outside for an MC? What's been your experience, Moaaz?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good to have someone from your company as well, but it can also be good. For example, we also moderate events for our clients, by the way. So we do that, of course, to act as a neutral party, someone who's an advocate for both the attendees and the one who's hosting it alike. So in that way, it's also good to have that additional person to kind of just talk, get people to ease in. And of course, it can be someone from your company too. It can be someone from the client side too, but it's all about just allowing them to talk and allowing them to, express themselves. So you don't want to always want them to answer what you're asking either. You want them to also even ask questions, for example. And of course, it does sound a bit complicated because you don't want too free-flowing, and so it drifts off track. That also is detrimental to the objective, of course. So there's a fine line. And again, that moderator, the speaker, the host, I think it's their job as well, because people are just there to have a bite and enjoy and learn a thing or two, but they don't know what the grand objective is. You also have to try and direct them a little here and there, help them understand what's going on and help them have a good time. So
fantastic advice. I love the idea of an interested third party that has both parties' interests, right, in mind. That seems like a great way to strike a good balance.
yeah, thank you.
Okay. So we've talked about networking. We've talked about the rise of B2B influencer marketing. Again, experiential marketing has been thrown into the mix. So the thing that's kind of pinging in the back of my brain now is, well, this all sounds fantastic. I want to do it. I want to alter my own strategy a little bit for next year. And at the same time, I'm thinking, as I go to put this in front of the people I would make the case to, like, what metrics am I going to use to measure this, right? If a CFO is going to look at this proposal, how is he going to know that it's money well spent? What's your attitude on that front?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the way we look at the traditional, model where people are more focused on activities like number of calls made or number of emails sent, reply rate, blah, blah, the traditional sales model. So let's kind of change that or apply that to the case you're saying. I think that how it would change is number of activities. So yeah, and I'm not talking about an activity can be defined not as just like an email, for example, but somewhere that some kind of activity that prompted a real relationship build process. For example, inviting someone again to, like talk on a podcast or an interview, or, like inviting them to an event even, or a virtual workshop, a webinar, somewhere where you got to have some real interaction with them. And those metrics are more, again, they're not short-term metrics. There needs to be a mindset shift as well on C-levels. If they don't have that mindset shift, then they're kind of forcing a different audience to go into a sales traditional bucket, which doesn't make sense. And then they'll say, oh, the activity is not working. But actually, it's the mindset where you have to understand that this activity works differently. It doesn't work like the traditional sales process. So number of activities is a good way to understand that. And connections as well on LinkedIn, for example. Activities can also be like them engaging with your content constantly. That means they're quite interested with people and with people in your company. I noticed I stumbled upon a company that actually leverages network for sales. I forget the name. Is it Comsor or something? Go to network. They've changed them. They talk about GTN instead of GTM. So they're like, it's go to network instead of go to market. And I love that. I love that terminology because it's true. Go to network. What they do is you have like 200 employees in your organization. Let's say those employees are connected with so many people in your ICP. So get warm introductions from each other as well. Like you leverage your network. So if we could even track, like on an organizational level, how many people our senior leadership is connected with in our accounts, and could we leverage that? The best salespeople, you probably notice, what they do is they notice, oh, we have a mutual connection with our CRO. I goes to their CRO and says, could you just drop them a line? I see they engage with your content, but how many take the time to do that? They were thinking relationship first. That person was engaging with that CRO's content for a long time, probably months. So an actualization, the result comes later. It doesn't come immediately. So monitoring those kind of activities, that kind of engagement is important. That's what I think. Monitor those activities, not white paper downloads or something really, that could be, that leaves a lot of gray area, something more meaningful. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Again, it's going back to putting it into buckets, right? So going back to our hypothetical CFO, if I walk in and then kind of explain to her that we have these buckets of, again, the GTN, right? The networking bucket is going to be a longer journey, but I think that messaging kind of relates across the C-suite. They've all been privy to relationships and business happening like that. so-and-so is connected to the CRO. Oh, well, I actually know that person too, right? And that kind of sales motion, I think, is something that's actually becoming more and more comfortable when you break it down from that perspective. But like you said, no one takes the time necessarily to do it. But when you shift that mindset to building network and building relationships, then that becomes a much more viable angle. So love that
100%.
advice. All right. So as we come to the end of the podcast, we have a few questions that we like to ask every guest, and longtime listeners of the show will realize that I've recently changed them. So I'd love your feedback on them. So the first one is, so we're recording this in January of 2025. Moaaz, in 5 years' time, what major change will happen in the B2B world that you and I, and none of us for that matter, see coming?
I think auto searching, but I think by that point, AI will start searching for things by itself. And maybe, I mean, that would be unexpected, at least in the sense that you don't even search on AI. You give it like just a task and it'll do the things for you, and even beyond that, actually. So I think that might be unexpected and and in some way AI is already doing that, but I'm talking about more strategic tasks. And that might be a bit unexpected. Yeah. So that's something I've been thinking about. I'm not sure if AI will get so intelligent to that point, but yeah, we could be wrong. Let's see what 5 years ahead, what happens.
It does not sound that far-fetched to me. I mean, we just upended, 30 years of SEO in 18 months, basically. So why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So the next question is, speaking of the future, now we're going back in time. If you go back in time and talk to your younger self, what career advice would you give him and why?
Yeah. So I think when I look back at myself and how I was like personally, I think being more professionally, if I say, be more customer centric, really try to be more focused on them and understand them better. Simply like not just doing internal research, but get out, talk, meet, and be less anxious as well. Take things easy, relax. I think that goes a long way. In the age of over digitization, I think we forget to, actually increase our attention span and not decrease it. It is decreasing, let's make no mistake, but generally YouTube comes up with YouTube Shorts. Now what's going to happen? YouTube, micros? I don't know, or 2-second videos. But anyway, I would say work on activities that actually increase your attention span. Start reading a book, go slower, think carefully, and be less anxious. And that's personal. And professionally, I think, look deeper into your customer and understand them more. That's what I would tell myself.
Yeah, it's fantastic advice, and advice that I think bears repeating. I think the last few interviews I've done with CROs, one of their big takeaways they've given to the audience was exactly that. It's like, talk to your customer. If you think that's not your job, you got another thing coming, right? Go out and talk to the customer.
You're missing out big time.
All right. Well, that's it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope you found this conversation as intriguing as I did. Moaaz, if people want to learn more about you, where should they go?
Well, I mean, there's always my LinkedIn profile. Always happy to connect with people and network there, of course. There's ConvergeX Connections. That's where I work. But absolutely, I'm most active on LinkedIn. And I would love for anyone to connect with me there, and always happy to discuss about go-to-market strategies and lead generation, and even off-topic. Of course, I love that too.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again for coming on the show, and
likewise,
we'll talk to you soon.
Have a nice day, Cory. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
You've been listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.